hopefully. And good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to Splendid Isolation number 25, our quarter-century show. And also, we have to say congratulations to Royal Oak today, who apparently has got to 1,000 subscribers. So well done, Royal
1,008. 1,008.
I'm sorry.
Big up.
Yep.
I'm joking. Thank you very much.
Anyway, you're welcome. And I'm going to do what I usually do. I'm going to start us off with a bit of a tune. There we go. Here.
We be soldiers free, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie. Lately come forth of the low country, with never a penny of money. Here, good fellow, I drink to thee, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie. To all good fellows, wherever they be, with never a penny of money. And he that will not pledge me this, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie, pays for the shot, whatever it is, with never a penny of money. Charge it again, boy, charge it again, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie, as long as you have any ink in your pen, with never a penny of money. We be soldiers free, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie, lately come forth of the low country, with never a penny of money. Charge it again, boy, charge it again, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie, as long as you have any ink in your pen, with never a penny of money. We be soldiers free, pardonnez-moi, je vous en prie, lately come forth of the low country, with never a penny of money.
Okay, and that was a song about 3 English volunteer soldiers who were helping the Dutch to fight against the Spanish in the Elizabeth I time. Okay, good evening, gents. I'm going to start us off like I usually do, go around the panel. If you've got anything particular to bring up, and I'm going to start with Limbu.
Well, you know what month it is. It's the month of the most sacred heart of Jesus. And the Sacred Heart it's based on the prayer of the consecration of his most sacred heart on the First Friday devotions. On the matter of this as well, I believe on the 3rd, it was Trinity Sunday, so 60 days after Easter, and it was the Corpus Christi, meaning the body of the Christ in Latin. And we celebrate it from the transubstantiation of the bread and wine into the actual body of the Christ during Mass. And one thing which I've noticed through the media is that no one ever mentions it, because faith, virtue, some could say, is dead, not to be backfilled or anything. And the media portrays everything as, oh, Pride Month, blah, but I think we need to hit our roots. We need to focus on it's the Christ of our Lord. It's the month of our Lord.
Well, I would certainly support that in favour of Pride Month, but there we go. Okay, Adam, anything in particular you'd like to bring up as an opening subject?
Oh, no, actually, nothing at all, except that it's all dreadful, and I've given up.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Okay, so we're going to ask the 1,000 subscriber boy himself, Royal Oak.
I was just reading up on the Stonewall thing. I didn't know that much about it. Usually, usually with these things, your initial impression is what your opinion is. But there has been some conflict between Liz Truss and Stonewall, hasn't there, in recent weeks?
I've been seeing
they've got some new. there was a whole thing. There's this Scottish feminist who got arrested by the, I think it was by the obviously by the Scottish government. Because she opposed something to do with Stonewall. I'm not even sure because they got some new definition of what a woman is, and loads of
Yeah.
radical feminists are upset. But
what didn't the person who runs Stonewall turn around and said that if you're anti-trans, that's the same as being anti-Semitic? I do believe.
mind you, Stonewall tried to scrub this out of their history. I remember there was a whole thing to do with their Wikipedia article. Stonewall used to be fairly anti-trans before I think about 2005. And they've gone to great lengths to scrub it off their Wikipedia article, which I think perhaps successfully, but yeah,
Okay.
interesting organization. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's cool. I mean, I'm glad that the government is distancing themselves from them. I mean, I don't think it means much, but I suppose we should take such infinitesimally small victories as we can get.
Hear, hear.
I will say to Sojourner in the chat, I'm not a pagan. I have a sympathy for pagans, but I'm actually an agnostic. So there you go. And I did not find that in any way, shape, or form disgusting. As I said,
Pagans
I
are all
actually.
hippies.
Well, I wouldn't say that's true either. But you know, I would definitely support going on about the Sacred Heart rather than going on about gay people. But that's just me. I'm going to turn to Ozzy and ask him: is there anything you'd like to bring up as an opening subject?
Well, I'm elated for another round of me being accused of being a social liberal, but I suppose that the interesting thing for me this week, aside from the appropriation of the rainbow that we are to enjoy for a month, is the fact that Vladimir Putin actually called out Joe Biden just today on the hypocrisy of people complaining about the storm of the Capitol, when I think for some reason I think the US has been encouraging marches on other capitals or something like that. But
color revolutions, you say?
Yeah. But it just comes to mind that once again, Putin is. I think Putin makes an ideal is a much more ideal ally for Britain than the United States or its whatever the United States seems to represent. Russia represents a indifferent and self-interested regional power, which I think we ourselves are, and him calling out Joe Biden and those hogwash people across the Atlantic should be encouraged, and I wish we could do the same. But that's all I had really on mind this week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you in many respects. I mean, it's impossible because of history, etc. But I don't totally disagree with you. I certainly don't see someone's echoing. I definitely don't. Somebody is echoing. Maybe you want to mute yourself or something. I definitely don't see Russia as a particular enemy of Britain at the moment. I mean, I'm not saying they couldn't become one in the future, but I don't see that they are at the moment. So yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Adam, what do you think about that stuff, mate?
I don't know. I don't think we can really ally with Russia in the same way that, despite some dispositions towards China, obviously we can't ally with them either.
Yeah, totally agree.
They are definitely better than a lot of the people we're currently entangled with, but I kind of think we largely need to go it alone for a bit.
I mean, the thing is that an entanglement with Russia, I think, would allow us for more freedom to do our own thing than an entanglement with anyone else, and it would also give us the benefit of sandwiching the eternal Leviathan of Europe, which we call Germany, and because I'm really starting to get tired of the EU, and also I think if Le Pen wins, in France this coming election, which I think there's actually now mounting evidence that she may. I think there is some reason for optimism and some reason to say, well, a loose allegiance between those three allows us to, one, have dependence on people with similar but different outlooks, and also give us our own freedom. But that's aside. I ramble.
Well, I mean, I mean, you could a good segue off of this into something that's still in current affairs is what would you do about what would you do about Belarus to if you wanted to have some sort of relationship with Russia that's maybe not necessarily an entanglement?
Let them have it. I don't
Yeah.
care. I really don't care.
But would you have any relationship with the other Slavic countries, or is it just Russia?
I mean, Ukraine has proven to be pretty devilish about how it treats its eastern areas and generally doesn't seem to give a toss. So I'm not entirely sure why we should give it to one regime who doesn't give a toss or another regime who doesn't give a toss about Ukraine. I think it's perfectly a watch. I think as long as we basically make clear with Russia, look, Poland is a G, you leave them alone. I really don't care.
Well, I don't. I kind of worry that Poland might be going the same way as the rest.
Well,
Eventually.
definitely. I mean, from my research, especially good old Catholic Poland, I do believe the PSI, the current leading government, is it's anti-German and anti-Russian. It's its own individual framework. So I can't see it under Putin hands anytime soon.
I think you've got to take note of the history behind all of this when you're talking about who our allies and who our friends are. You can't just wave a magic wand and suddenly make new alliances, sadly, in some respects. But I mean, like, I don't think it's possible for Britain to be an ally of Russia, but I certainly think we can be pretty neutral towards her in most respects.
I think we should practice splendid isolation, and that's
Yes.
He said it. He said it.
Yeah, there's much to be said for what Adam says there. I mean, the exception to that is I think we do have to back Australia to some degree in the Pacific, because if we don't, who will? Apart from the Americans, this is the other problem. So there's that.
Well, I mean, because we've got this thing recently, haven't we, where New Zealand is kind of like allying itself with China.
Under the horse-faced feminist, yes, I do believe so.
But I mean, the thing is, we can criticise them for it, but at the end of the day, the rest of the Anglosphere isn't exactly taking a strong stand against China, and because of New Zealand's position, its proximity, and its relative size, they have to choose a side.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
we decide.
Well, traditionally, New Zealand used to ally themselves with Australia and also UK, of course. But for years now, the New Zealand government has not spent enough on defence. They only have 2 frigates, for example, in their navy. All their other ships are little patrol boats, which are okay for policing fishing waters, but not much use for anything else. New Zealand is in a weak position because of decisions by the New Zealand government. They haven't spent enough on defence. They have allowed their alliance with Australia and also the UK to lapse, and America to lapse. And so that's why they're in such a weak position. But now, of course, they have this horse-faced feminist socialist in charge of them. They're not doing very well.
Right, but they could. I mean, even if they did fund their military quite substantially, they could never match the Chinese.
No, but in an alliance with Australia, like traditionally, the Royal New Zealand Navy had 4 frigates, which is for the size of the country, the population of the country, that's probably a reasonable navy. 4 New Zealand frigates alongside of the Royal Australian Navy. And whatever Britain could send down there, that's an entirely different matter. And also, like New Zealand got rid of their air force. They don't have any fast jets anymore and haven't had for quite a few years. And I remember even when I first moved to Australia, just after the turn of the century, I was up in Darwin and I was watching the Royal New Zealand Air Force doing exercises with the Royal Australian Navy. And these Royal New Zealand Air Force Skyhawks were attacking, like simulating attacks on Royal Australian Navy warships. So, you know, it not so long ago, the Kiwis were strong allies of the Australians. They're certainly not now. And as Spirit of Pampas says in the chat, they actually produced very, very good soldiers in both world wars.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is just the way I see it. I don't see how they can, like, they can't trust on the rest of the Anglosphere to have their back anymore, like they probably used to.
Well, I mean,
because the Anglosphere in general
yeah.
is become a little bit flabby and a bit.
Yep. Don't disagree with any of that.
I
don't disagree with any of that. But I mean, as you guys know, I'm a Kanzuk supporter, so I hope that eventually things will change a bit in New Zealand. But like, you know, under this Prime Minister, that's certainly not going to happen.
Yeah, I want to see the Commonwealth reunited under a strong king.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against that myself if I thought it was realistic. I don't think it's very likely, but I would like to see it for sure.
So are we going to talk about this unwashed problem?
Oh God, that stream! My God, I was in the chat on that stream, and Unwatched actually asked AA certainly 3 times, possibly 4 times, not to read out specific people's super chats because he didn't want their voices heard. You know, and then one of his supporters in the chat said that my God was Mark Collette, which just shows you how much he knows about me, because like the idea that I like Mike Collette is just crazy.
Yeah, well, this is the thing though, is that like in that stream there was a bit, I didn't see it, I didn't watch much of it, but I heard
watched all of it, certainly.
That he did a lot of sort of tarring everyone with the same brush. Like he said at one point that, well, basically everyone in this chat is a connoisseur of the Austrian painter or something to that effect.
Yes, he did. He said everyone in AA's chat was Nazis. Yeah,
he's done enough streams with enough different areas of the right to know that that's just blatantly not true, and yet he still goes for it.
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, look, his basic thing was that we're not nice enough to rad femmes. Yeah, and I know because these guys, like, you know, TERFs, I think is what they're referred to, because they don't like trans, in inverted commas, women, because obviously trans women are actually blokes, but there we go. In that, I agree with them, but that does not make them our allies, I'm afraid. In other respects.
I mean, there's something to be said for keeping a distance from the racist feminists, but the thing is that you should still probably strive to make the right a space that offers people something, both men and women.
Sure.
I watched there's this I've noticed I think as Unwashed has, there's a lot of these sort of, like, I think the word is reactionary feminists. There's people like this Alex Cal something woman who I think's associate of Mencius Moldberg or Curtis Yarvin or whatever. She's been influenced by him. She did an interview on, I think it was on trigonometry. Don't laugh at me for watching trigonometry, but it was, I think it's perfectly it's perfect. It's a perfectly fine intellectual pursuit. No, she had some very interesting things to say. She was like, I think you know, a lot of women will be a lot happier if they lived the lives of their grandmothers, basically, you know, if they want to, which is a, you know, a perfectly fine message that we probably agree with to a large extent. So she was okay. I've seen a few of these other people. I think one of them was called what do you call it, Bimbo Ubermensch or some shit like that. There's a load of them who have just come on, just come around in the last 2 months. And I don't know, like I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but like I don't know, it depends. Like I don't know how well that like message will sell to women. Like it's a bit difficult to say, but I don't know. Are we gonna see a female Jordan Peterson at some point? Could well happen. Would be an interesting thing.
Maybe.
I think I don't know. Some of them seem fine in terms of like I don't know. like personal views. We shouldn't like shift on anything just to appeal to more women. That's fucking gay.
Yep.
But if like people
Based.
want to agree, if anyone like agrees with our basic positions, then like obviously fine. I don't really mind. I mean,
I'm an old-fashioned sort of bloke, and I'm not in favour of being rude to women for no purpose. I mean, absolutely not. But what Tom Wash was talking about was he was saying, well, nearly all of these women are unmarried mothers, for example. Well, there's a problem. Why are they unmarried mothers? Now, he turned around and said, oh, because they've been in awful relationships with horrible men. So men are always at fault again? I'm sorry, I'm not going to support that position. When two people get divorced, there are two sides to it.
Right,
Yeah.
but this movement's full of former leftists, so I don't think we should turn around and say, well, this woman's also a former leftist, therefore she's excluded.
I don't say such things, but I think, if women want to be treated with respect on the right, then what they need to do is try not to be an unmarried mother with someone else's child, and also maybe try not to have 59 sexual partners. They might find that helps too.
I think everyone should be treated with respect. That's my view. But
you earn respect.
In general, as I said, I'm not in favour of being rude to women. I was brought up like not to swear in front of women, for example. If I swore in front of a woman when I was a teenager, I get it, and was with my father would hit me on the back of the head. So I am old-fashioned in that respect, but I do think that if women want to make their way in the right and in patriotic / nationalist circles, then I think they've got to behave accordingly. Now, all right, I suppose there are cases where there are single mums and it's not her fault. But there's so many single mums today that it can't be always the bloke's fault.
I'm not saying that those single mums were single mums and it wasn't their fault. I'm saying that that probably came from a time when they weren't where they are now politically or philosophically.
Yeah, I suppose
we
that's
can
true.
probably overlook that as long as there's a certain understanding that these are the views and these are the stances.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'd absolutely support that. And as I said again, if women want respect from right-wing circles, then don't behave like sluts.
I think women come later. The thing is that you've got to if you get a political movement off the ground, if you want to have different views, and I'm not trying to be a misogynist here, this is just how things are. Men start things up, they come up with the thing, and when it starts gaining traction, the women follow.
Exactly.
I agree.
That's how it works.
This
is why the right wing at the moment is generally full of thirsty young lads, and it's a bit unfortunate. And I've seen this behaviour myself, as I can attest to. You see a lot of young lads who are very thirsty, and they end up prostrating themselves in rather unfortunate ways for women, which disadvantages them, emasculates them, and generally puts us in a bad position. We should all be of the mind that, disavowing and being rude to women, you're just an asshole. Women shouldn't vote. Blah, blah, blah. Get in the kitchen. It's just you sound like a spurg.
To be fair, I don't think women should vote, but there we go.
Oh, well, I don't think anyone should vote.
Yeah,
I don't support one man, one vote.
It's a relevant criteria to me because you should give the vote on the merit of the individual, and some women may qualify for that, and some men may not. It doesn't really matter to me. It's kind of superfluous.
I support some form of house voting, if anything.
I would be more cautious about that because it's starting to show that the upper classes the upper middle classes are cucked, and I don't want to give them more power.
I said household. I don't necessarily mean you have to own your house. I'm talking about family. A vote for a family. Okay. I might more support that.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
I said that at uni once, and everyone was like that. I remember that. Do you think votes should be dropped to 16? Does anyone have a different view on voting? I remember I said no. I think it should be family voting. It was like bloody hell. I remember that.
That reminds me. Okay, let's just finish off this unwashed nonsense. Anybody else got anything to say about the unwashed stream?
He's burning all his bridges right now.
He is. My final point will be, I suppose, I don't know, I've not really made much point, but I'd say, like, I don't know, if you looked at any, like, largely online, largely very dissident, like, you know, if you like showed your face and like said some of the things that a lot of right wing people say, you do your job. You know, this is the kind of thing, you know. I don't want to, like, I think probably everyone here would agree with this, but I mean, I'd say women tend to be more fair weather, like, for the most part. There's obviously some exceptions.
Well, they tend to be less interested in politics as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, my politics class at what I think at A level, I think there was one girl in it, and I think I don't know, to talk about my 1008 subscriber YouTube channel, I think it's 16. I think it's 16 something. 16 point something % female, which is probably actually higher than my politics class at school was. So I don't know. I remember that. But anyway, I'm just panel guest. No, thank you very much. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I mean, I suppose like I don't know, the thing that they're complaining about, right? If it was like I don't know. AA, I think, had quite a lot of options available to him. He made some videos on economics that were, you know, fairly mainstream. A lot of people probably agreed with them. He had the option to, if he wanted to, like, you know, his name's out there. You can, like, Google it or whatever. You know, he was a guy. You know, he could have said, I'm going to try and influence mainstream politics. I'm going to show my face. You know, maybe we'll get an organization set up to try and influence mainstream politics. But no, he didn't do that.
Well, it's probably a good idea he didn't, because that would be Sargon level stupidity.
Wow. Okay. Well, no. I think what Academic Agent was a little bit more intellectual than what Sargon was doing. And you know, the thing is with Sargon was that he was tainted goods because he was a bit of an internet troll and a bit of a sort of, you could say, a bombastic fellow. I like Sargon, actually. I was going to send him an email asking for an interview. I reckon he'd say yes. What do you think?
Shit, too hard, mate.
No, come on.
That's going to lower the tone of your. It's going to lower the tone of your channel if you do that. But anyway, that's my opinion on Sargon. But
you probably still watch.
Should we bring back Gamergate Sargon?
Yes. No, I remember this. I remember.
I haven't watched Sargon in years, man. I stopped years and years ago.
He did a thing where he's like, "We need to get Trump to tweet Gamergate." That was towards the end of last year. He was like, "Yeah, which dude? Don't worry. All we need is the energy that we'll get by Trump tweeting the word Gamergate."
But Sargon's another one who came on an AA stream, and I generally like Academic Agent. He came on an AA stream, and he actually said that British people should send letters to immigrants in third world countries that they shouldn't come to Britain. He actually said
that was really.
I mean, God's sake. Oh dear, I like that. Midwit is like the best you can say, I think.
Tommy Hill said Biden needs to tweet about Gamergate. That would give Sargon the energy he needs to continue his assault on the establishment.
I always think Sargon would make a good deputy manager of a second-hand vacuum cleaner store, but that's just me.
Hi guys, where is Sargon? Oh. Poor Sargon.
Didn't you literally just say you wanted to interview him?
Well, yeah, I will.
But,
I mean,
astounding diplomat, dear boy.
No. Okay, I mean, I think he's like a nice guy, and he's obviously had like a lot of influence on like internet stuff, whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't think he's a bad bloke, and I think to be fair, like, you know, a lot of people give him a lot of stick, especially on like further right circles. But who was the one person who was willing to give them a platform? Who was the person who did interviews with Jared Taylor? Who was the person who did interviews with, you know, more edgy people like that? You know, a lot of people wouldn't have done that, and Sargon did. So, I mean, I think he gets a lot of stick he doesn't deserve. And I think, in particular, Oak social skills and diplomacy up there with unwashed. What are you on about, son? Come on. do not badmouth me in this way, okay?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with what some people in the chat were saying earlier, that unwashed is basically making himself the enemy of everyone at the moment. I can't, you know, like, whether you're right of me or left of me, I think nearly everyone detests unwashed at the moment. I'm not sure what he's doing.
Well, I don't know what. I don't think he was particularly well received on that stream, but Anyway, I didn't slag Sojo. I didn't slag him off. I think he's I think a lot of the treatment he deserved, especially like people going after his like wife and kids and shit, was a bit probably a bit too far. I think he's a quite on. I think he's an intellectually honest person. And he's a lovely big fella. I want Sargon on. Anyway, he's wrong about some things though. But anyway, anyone else want to talk now? I'm done speaking.
He's well read, but sometimes the arguments he puts together are a little bit funky. But and a lot of people really put a downer on his intellect, and it's like, well, no, he can actually be an incredibly smart guy at times.
Yeah.
I mean, also, the other thing about the other criticism I have of Sargon is that he did a series of streams with some of these NRX guys, like Charlemagne, I think was one of them, and he did 3 or 4 streams with them over a month or so. And even by the time of the last stream, he clearly had not read anything by Mencius Moldbug, etc. Just nothing.
I think he was, but he's kind of reverting back to a set. Like, you know, on a lot of his thoughts coming out of that.
Yeah.
No one's read Mencius Moldbug. I can't stomach the fellow. He's impossible.
I've read quite a lot of this stuff actually, but yeah, okay. And I'm not NRX,
but I never share it with anyone.
Yeah, I'm not NRX. You know? I mean, if you're going to talk about someone who is well read, that's Mencius Moldbug. He certainly is well read, but he drops those things like someone who's a social climber dropping names, you know.
I think he got some things wrong about. I think Robert Filmer. He said he was a Catholic when he wrote the Anglican Defense of Absolute Monarchy.
Okay.
There's a few things he got wrong. Like I think Moldbug was basically just a quite clever computer programmer who wrote a blog. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got I believe we've got at least a couple of Catholics on this panel, haven't we?
Got one, I think.
One.
Yeah, just me.
Oh,
nice.
Is it? Oh, okay. But one of the things that's getting on my nerves at the moment, I'm speaking as an agnostic here, is that I follow quite a lot of people who are Catholics, but I don't follow them because they're Catholics. I follow them for other reasons, usually because they're on the right politically. What I'm finding a lot of at the moment is supposedly based Roman Catholics continually saying that all Protestants are cucks, basically, which is like, I don't think it was ever true. So I don't think it's even true now. I mean, look at some of the Anglo-Catholics.
No, Nimby, don't go there.
Okay, I won't go there because, you know, I must cause a bit of controversy, but yeah, sure, I can agree with you, Duke. Too much of them American Catholics just cucking hard, you know.
It's not that the Catholics are cucking, it's that they're saying Protestants are.
The important thing to remember is that, at least in the United States, I don't know about Europe, but in the United States, the most conservative Christian group is the evangelical Protestants. No one else comes close.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about channels like Apostolic Majesty, for example, which is a channel I really love. His history is great, yeah. But he and I think at least one of his major contributors there are Catholics, and they continually go on about, you know, only Roman Catholics are based and Protestants are not. And I just don't see that as being particularly useful apart from anything else.
No comment. I'm just going to say no comment.
No, you can't get out of this like that. Come on.
No.
All Catholics are just like Latinas.
No, I'm the Asian. I'm the token Asian here. I'm meant to create peace. I don't create divisions.
The thing is, though, I mean, this is like, I mean, I even heard Settlers Lament going after the Orthodox bros, and he was saying like, oh yeah, but you look at all these Orthodox countries and they all have a legal abortion and stuff like that, and I thought, is he trolling? Because I know he sometimes does this, and I thought he's missing a ton of context.
He would be wrong. Most Eastern Orthodox countries are very, very socially conservative.
Yeah, and a lot of the places in which he's referring to are places that had, you know, the Soviet Union in them. So there's kind of an external pressure there. And I'd actually say there's
some external pressure, but that he is actually just wrong there. I mean, from what I know, I mean, I mainly go to the Greek church. In Greece, I think something like 70% of people oppose gay marriage, and a similar number oppose abortion. I can't give exact numbers, but I suspect it's probably pretty similar numbers in other places in Southeast Europe.
I think I've seen some similar
he's
numbers.
running a load of bollocks.
Yeah, Seb's running bollocks. Fuck Seb. I'm JK.
Not joking.
I don't know. Look, my objection to this is I think that we on the right have got so many problems at the moment, and we have so many enemies. The idea of like dividing us by religion seems absolutely ridiculous to me at the moment.
Yeah.
It really does.
So petty.
Yeah, it's petty. Yeah, we need euchemism. I mean, we need to unite under a banner, under Christ. Simply under Christ.
Jesus did pray on the cross for unity in the church, guys.
Yeah.
Quick reminder. But Anglicans aren't Protestants, by the way. We're not.
Yeah, if you're untold on your religion, become Anglican. They don't know what they believe.
I don't know what.
But I'd also point out there is the High Church, the Anglo-Catholic Church, which is like, it's pretty similar to Catholicism, to be honest with you.
Is it though?
To quote Aristotle,
it's closer to it than not.
Yeah, it's closer to it. Yeah, I agree to that. Yeah.
They have apostolic succession.
Fair enough.
But yes, we could get very, very theologically spurgy very quickly because Limbo is quite well read on the subjects, and I like
Duke
to
the
pretend.
pagan.
if you're unsure, just pray to Jesus.
I don't know why Sojourner's spreading this thing that I'm a pagan. As I said, I have a certain sympathy for pagans because of the fact that I'm a traditionalist. And we were pagans before we were Christian, so
the official definition.
But I certainly
of pagan
don't call myself a pagan.
Yeah,
he just wants to trees, you guys.
Yeah.
The official definition of pagan is non-Christian or non-religious. I think so. That's what Paul refers to in I think Colossians, wherever it is. He says when you were pagans, you worshipped false idols. But when he just means non-religious or like whatever.
Typically, it means a pantheon.
Yeah,
it means
like the Greco-Roman gods.
The Greco-Roman shit. Yeah.
So when Jesus talked about pagans, he normally meant the sort of Phoenician gods like Baal and Moloch.
Yeah.
And all those nasty people who they sacrifice children to. And of course, in Europe, you get European paganism, and that, of course, varied from people to people. You get Wotan and Odin and all that sort of thing. It's all very special and particular. So,
they couldn't set fire to the logs. Lol. Get it.
I'm just the thing I've just put up on the screen there. Now, Bowden, I think we really need Sojo for this because Sojo is our Bowden expert. But so far as I can work out, Bowden was kind of was a pagan, but he wore it pretty lightly, I believe. As I say, I'm not an expert on that. This is the sort of thing that Sojo. Yeah, absolutely. But sadly, he's not on today. He's just catcalling from the sidelines. So
sadly, Jonathan Bowden isn't on today to answer.
Listen, I'm a huge Jonathan Bowden fan for sure. I mean,
well, he's right about many things. Yeah.
If you're on the right, you have to watch his speeches, etc., and you can find quite a few of them on Sojo's YouTube channel, etc.
We love Sojo. Big up Sojo.
Yeah, we love our Sojo.
No, Sojo's my mate. I'm not going to make any bones about that one. But anyway, let's move on to. Unless anyone else has got anything to say about the stuff we've just been talking about, has everyone had their say on it? My only thing is I don't think that people on the right should be divided by religion. I mean, if people want to be Christian, that's fine. I'm certainly not against that. I'm a cultural Christian myself. But this idea that only Catholics are based, I'm not really a supporter of that myself.
I think people on the right should be divided by whether or not they're unwashed. If you are unwashed,
but unwashed is not on the right, is he? I mean, he's a social liberal, basically.
Yeah. No, one thing which I do need to mention
old chestnut. You're a social liberal.
You're a social liberal.
Yeah, I do think for the right, we do need to put Christ first. Like that should be the number one priority for us, at least.
I don't think so. And I say this from a pragmatic perspective because
Boo.
whether we like it or not, most people these days are not religious. You can allude to God, you can encourage God, but I do not think you should be creating an exclusive message of if you are not for Christ, you are not with us.
No, yeah, no, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant in the sense that Christ should be first. Whenever we look at our teachings or our stances, the
Yeah.
movement should be the helm of Christ. But we shouldn't be forcing people saying, "Oh, if you aren't Christian, fuck off." No, that shouldn't be the movement.
I don't think you can solve a lot of the problems in our society without addressing irreligiousness, in my view. I think people really need.
There's definitely a gap. I mean, the lack of religion for most average people has definitely left a gap in their lives. I can see that as an agnostic.
Yeah, it definitely causes problems because when you get rid of religion, it basically allows for a new religion that we call ideology to come in. And that's what we live with today. So don't
Politics is heresy. Sorry, I'm interrupting everyone today. I'm just high energy.
No, bro. Interrupting is the name of the game.
1K.8 subs. Go on.
I mean, yeah.
You could become a Sargon.
I could become the new Sargon.
Call the next journalist you meet a dirty smear merchant. Let's see how it goes.
Does anyone know any Labour MPs? Anyway,
well, you've only got to email them and say you won't rape them. You know.
I mean, has anyone on the stream read?
You can message Diane Abbott a calculator. That would. Oh, good damn.
Oh dear God. Yeah, and then after you've done that, then try and go into mainstream politics and see how well that goes.
I was the one who sent Diane Abbott the calculator. Bro, you've won the election. You're done.
Yeah, I am agreeing with Son of Britain in the chat. He's saying nowadays people worship the holy NHS, and so Christianity needs to make a comeback. Well, yeah, rather than the NHS, I'd agree. So absolutely.
I mean, last year, does anyone remember that song that came out by? It was the most middle class thing ever, and you had that woman and sing "Thank you NHS, thank you NHS for all you do for us," and it just reminds you just how sick some people are.
Dr. Fauci.
Oh my God.
Those that know will know. Those that know will know.
Yes, I think I've seen that somewhere. I mean, where I am in Melbourne and in Australia, we're on our 4th lockdown now, and it was supposed to be for a week, and it's been extended for another week. And I went into town the other day to get a week's worth of supplies, and virtually all the shops in town were closed down because they're not allowed to be open because of the lockdown. But also in between all the shops that are temporarily shut, what I did notice was how many have actually got for let signs up on them, and their businesses that have gone bust.
You can tell you're in the army because you didn't say go grocery shopping. You went say, "Oh, I got to go get some supplies."
Yeah. I'll be honest. I detest shopping. Whenever I've been with a woman, she does the shopping, not me. So I do it as seldom as possible. But I was just noticing the number of businesses which I've closed down permanently because of these lockdowns. And in Victoria is I think it's one of the smallest states in Australia, but it's still very big. It's larger than England, I believe. And this lockdown has been caused by just over 60 cases, most of which can actually be traced back to Indians coming into the country. So they've shut down the whole state for 60 cases. No deaths, no one's died. It's just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I kind of dropped at work the other day that there's still lots of flights coming in and out, and a lot of this stuff about flight bans is mostly rubbish. And they
Yeah.
actually went on the website and had a look, and they were all sort of a bit mind blown over it. Everyone in the office was all crowded around this computer. They're going, "Holy shit!" Counting up all the planes from like Mumbai and places like that.
Yep. And then they'll go on about the Indian variant and all this kind of crap, you know. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And this is a virus with a 98.7% survival rate. It's not actually the most deadly virus in the history of the human race. It's not the Black Death. I don't know. Like even when I was going in the supermarket, there was the mall cop in front of the supermarket, or probably the supermarket security bloke, who was trying to get my contact details, and I just told him to get stuffed. But he wanted to write down my address, where I'd come from. I mean, bugger that shit. I just said no. You know.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the I mean, this doesn't exist in non-democratic countries. Something that's quite interesting, and I suspect it's probably because the ruling parties are afraid of going, oh, "You let 3 people die," and they lose the election as a consequence. So I think that's what all these lockdowns are about. They're actually just about election guarding and appearances.
Well, I'm almost certain that the one in Victoria at the moment is because very few Victorians have been vaccinated. It was like well under 20%. And I think this lockdown is to try and force people into getting their virtually untested vaccine. That's my own
opinion. Possibly.
Which I won't be taking, like, unless 6 blokes come along and drag me and hold me down. That's the only way I'll take it.
Well, I mean, now that the vaccine passport thing's gone, there's basically no reason to get one, is there?
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, like, they were dangling holidays for British people in front of their eyes, but I think increasingly people are seeing that they're really not going to be able to go on holiday overseas this year. So, what was the point? I mean, isn't it like the 21st of this month or something that they're supposed to be getting rid of all these lockdowns in the UK?
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to carry on, isn't it? They're just going to keep doing it until they can make sure that no one dies, and then when people stop dying, then then maybe they'll give it a rest.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing I've always noticed about this is that we've got the average age for men, the average lifespan for men in the UK is about 78, and it's about 83 for women. And most of the people who've died from the China virus have been over 85. So, they're people who have lived longer than most people do. So, again, it's just an enormous overreaction. And because it's like all over the world, I just think there's much more to it than this bloody silly, than the virus. Which, incidentally, we now learn probably did come from a Chinese laboratory. So,
the media. Good old media.
Well, I mean, I always thought it probably came from the laboratory, but you weren't allowed to say that. But now apparently you are.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's kind of irrelevant, though, isn't it? Whether it came from a laboratory or whether it came from man eating bats and testes. Like, I don't really care either way. It's still China's fault. Give us our dollar.
I was on the note of the Chinese lab thing. I heard it was American Canadian. They were both doing it together until the Chinese fucked up somewhere, and the Canadians and Americans just separated themselves from the incident.
Yeah, I could believe that for certain. I certainly could believe that.
Yeah, it
was
some Washington Post stuff and some other stuff. So yeah.
Well, the question has always been there's been like a long-standing theory, hasn't there, that like the Chinese deliberately released it just because they knew that the Western governments couldn't handle it properly. Maybe a theory with some backing, but it wouldn't line up with some other things that perhaps people on the stream might think about COVID. But
No.
I don't know. There might be something to that, but I mean,
I-
the Chinese government is able to sort of impose sort of very authoritarian controls, and people just sort of go along with it, don't they? But
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not.
A bit like the British government, really.
Well, yeah, I suppose. But,
And I wouldn't compare the Chinese government to the British government. Let's be real, lads.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of locking people in their homes for months at a time, it's not that different, is it? Really?
Well, I mean, the consequence of breaking lockdown here is a slap on the wrist and £100 fine. The consequence of breaking lockdown in China is a concentration camp.
Yeah,
Yes.
I do see that. But what I'm saying is that, like, the idea, even 2 years ago, that the British or any other Western government could turn around and tell people that they have to close their businesses and stay at home and not go out would have been laughed at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And-
the consequences are not the same, and that's what I think would be the distinguishing point.
Well, didn't all of the lockdown cases get thrown out of court
Exactly.
in the UK?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't been over here, by the way. They haven't been over here. Like, there was a demonstration in Melbourne last weekend, and the cops were they were really behaving like the Stasi or the KGB. You know, they really were not pleasant at all. And they were beating women up and doing all this stuff, which they do continually in Victoria.
Oh, quick mention. Big up, Dave.
yeah.
Hey,
Big
Big
up.
Dave.
Big Dave. We love him.
Do you?
Cool.
Okay. Hello, Big Dave. Hello, Big Dave. Yeah.
Do you know he's an ex-Muslim?
Yeah.
Big Dave.
Big Dave.
We're just laughing. He's such a great optics guy. We love Dave.
Okay.
Great.
He's a great optics guy. Okay. I'll believe that when I see it. Adam, you got anything to say on this subject before we move on?
What, former Muslims or?
No. On the lockdowns and the China virus and all that shit.
No, I haven't.
Okay, who's beating women? Someone's saying that beating women is based. you all have a moshed after you, mate.
Oh, yeah. Bless.
If you're saying you're beating women, you know.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got to check it out on this corner of the right wing every now and then if someone's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's common, you know.
No, stop that.
Yeah, stop beating the women. The Australian police, Victoria police particularly. They're the Victorian Stasi these days. But yeah. So let's see, what else are we going to talk about? I did say what I was going to do was go over some of the things I spoke earlier to Colin Liddell about.
It's good doing that.
The first one is Gay Pride Month. Have we got anything to say about Gay Pride Month apart from how tedious it is?
I saw a funny video the other day of someone painting the zebra crossing as a pride rainbow flag, and some policemen were on their horses riding towards the rainbow flag, and the horses were absolutely and refused to walk over it. I thought it was a nice little metaphor.
No, that was a couple of years ago. But I think the one thing you always
Based horses.
Based horse.
God creatures, my friend.
I'm always like horses and dogs, my friend. Man's best friends.
The thing you always notice every year, I think people pointed out, I think it was Bethesda, people pointed out for it, is that the companies always change the LGBT logo, other than in Russia, Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
All the countries
And
where
China.
they can't.
And China, they won't do it in China, right?
And China.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always something you notice every year. I mean, one rule for the many and one for the rest, of course.
I mean, they're just taking advantage of the West. I mean, the West is, of course, going to bootleg to this type of progressive idea. So, of course, they're going to do that crap.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's shoved down everyone's throat all the time these days. It's just constant, you know.
I mean, they're just trying to make a quick buck. I mean, whether that's morally right, no, it's not morally right. However, they're taking advantage of our current system, which is fucked. and it should be a wake-up sign for most people.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Slippery slope. You know, this is
slippery
why
slope.
we have transvestite story hour, and why we end up with like 7-year-old little boys dancing in gay strip clubs. And
Yes,
you know, this is
shame.
supposed to be some form of civilization. You know,
And why our historical British monarchs are Nubians and all that sort of thing.
yeah, Anne Boleyn as a black woman and all that. It's just, you know,
I wonder what you. I was wondering what you were on about when you said Nubians. I thought it was some kind of like shaming term. Noob. But yeah, I don't know. I think
it's a slightly different thing, you know, the race swapping and all this kind of stuff, which is constantly done.
I don't think it is. I think it's exactly the same because it's coming from the exact same power level. It's coming from the non-government establishment. And it's basically
it's all part of critical theory for sure.
Yeah, and they're basically just trying to repackage themselves to look appropriate to modern audience, or what they think is appropriate to modern audience.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea that one of Henry VIII's wives was black is just totally ridiculous. I mean, you know, it'd be like making one of Shaka Zulu's wives an English woman. You know, it's just nonsense.
I mean, it's quite interesting because you would have thought at least 10, 20 years ago, people when they would make these films would be thinking, we've got to get people really engaged in our film. We've got to make them engaged in the reality of this. And of course, if I saw that, my suspension of disbelief is just completely gone. And I wonder if they know that that's the case. And I wonder if they're just doing it as like a cruel joke or something like that.
I just think that, you know, it's just typical woke crap, basically. Barn Door has just reminded me of a subject I did want to bring up, which actually you guys might find interesting. This is the Amazon Lord of the Rings TV series, which looks like it's going to be like one of the biggest financial disasters in history, because they are making Tolkien woke. They're changing lots of the races of some of the people, so you can have like loads of black guys in Tolkien, which there should not be. And they're also going to put lots of feminism in it and this kind of thing. Now, I'm presuming most of you guys will know that Tolkien obviously was an Englishman. He was a devout Roman Catholic. He was a professor of Anglo-Saxon, and he was also a British soldier who fought in the Battle of the Somme in 1916 in the First World War. And he actually specifically wrote Lord of the Rings as English and British myth and high fantasy. So, you know, this is why there's mostly white people in it in terms of the humans.
Well, it's also thematic. It's also very inegalitarian. It talks about things like the line of kings, which is superior to the house of the stewards, and how certain races are simply better than others. And all this very inegalitarian stuff that you would think people would just not really gel with. People of this sort of left-wing bent would just not really gel with. So it's going to be very interesting to see them try and... I mean, I think this show's about the Silmarillion. And the Silmarillion is one of the most hierarchical books ever. It's like, these people are better than these people. These angels are better than these angels. And all of that. There's no equality in the Silmarillion. So how they're going to actually navigate that?
I think they're going to ruin it. And like even some of the Tolkien fans have been slagging off the people who really, really like Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, who have been pointing out how they can't do this. Yeah, and they're being called racist and all this nonsense.
Well, my immediate thoughts go to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit's interpretations by Peter Jackson. So the Lord of the Rings was a kind of semi-faithful interpretation of the books, and they are soundly regarded as one of the best film adaptations ever. And they are really, really, really phenomenal films.
And they stuck fairly closely to the actual the canon that they're based on.
They did their best. The Hobbit, on the other hand, was a
Yeah.
complete charade, and like they went so far away from Tolkien that everyone said, "Well, this is just a load of Hollywood tripe."
Yeah, they're not very popular, as I understand
Yeah.
it.
So if they do that even more with the Silmarillion, then this should be juicy. This should be a little bit of fun.
Well, they've apparently spent like $2.5 billion on this TV show. So if it bombs, and I hope it does, because of the changes that they're making to it. If it bombs, it's going to be a financial disaster, and I hope that's what happens. But I certainly, everyone I know who knows more about Tolkien than me, which is not hard, is telling me they're not going to be watching this TV show at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we spoke about the whole pride thing earlier, right? And it's again a question of voting with your feet. I mean, why do companies like put rainbows all over everything? It's because they know that the gays will buy this stuff. And it's a question of, do you want gayness? I mean, if you don't want gayness, then don't buy the gayness.
You want total
No, you can't make a difference because of the cathedral. Shut up, you mong! Right? It's time to
Don't give them your money. Don't give them your money.
Power, all right? Okay.
Yeah, don't give them your
The thing
money.
is, these people actually know what they're doing, though, don't they? Because I mean, I've seen some of these accounts, right? These sort of apparent Lord of the Rings fan club accounts, and they're and the stuff they're saying is actually just rubbish, right? It's literally just bullshit. They're taking quotes from his letters, immensely out of context, to draw this sort of thing that he's actually their guy. And it's
absolutely
so
right,
bad faith. They must know what they're doing.
Oh, look, I know that, what's it called? The OneRing.net has gone totally politically correct and woke, in inverted commas, and feminist. And they're doing that because they're being given early access to the movie, and that's the only reason they're doing it. They're doing it for access. But I don't know. Tolkien is much more popular than I had realized a few years ago. Like I've read Lord of the Rings book a long time ago, and it's much more popular than I'd realized. And I think that actually, if they make too many changes, they're going to get a lot of pushback.
Oh, no, it's the most popular fiction bookseller ever. The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think it's one of them. Yeah, it is. Yeah, after the Bible and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the most popular franchise in the world. If they really think they could play ad liberty with this, I mean, maybe they can. But
let's not forget, these idiots have already destroyed Doctor Who. They've destroyed Star Wars. They've destroyed Star Trek. All of this has been destroyed by the same woke feminist race mixing nonsense. You know.
Yeah, I mean, on one side you have the Star Wars films, which were, I think most people agree that they were bad, but they.
Yeah, I've never been a fan. Never was a fan. No.
But I think the new trilogy made them something like $3 billion, maybe.
Yeah.
More.
Well, the thing is, like,
on the counter, you have the Ghostbusters flop in 2016.
Yep.
Which I think they lost money on, possibly.
Well, the thing is, like, I've been watching a bit of Deep Space Nine recently, Star Trek. But I mean, like, and I didn't even know there was a modern adaptation that made it really gay and homo. But like, I don't know, nothing can really take away from these pieces of media, can it? Really? I mean, they will always have a fan base, and I have a lot of questions as to how many people like actually watch like modern day Netflix stuff, because I don't think.
Yeah, they're not that
people,
popular.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I agree. Not that popular.
It's Ataman was talking about like the Lord of the Rings, people with beards and bald heads, and I don't know what some other things that soy people have. My dad's got a beard though, to be fair, so beards aren't soy.
I've got a goatee. I've got a goatee, but I've had that for like 20 years now. So
yeah, okay, right, fine. You understand the archetype I'm trying to paint here. But it's a question of like, those people, those rootless jellyfish that float through society with no ties to anything. Those people will always consume the progressive media, and they aren't the majority of people though. They're to an extent like quite a small percentage of people, right? So you don't have to win over them. You have to win over just normal people, and that's the conclusion.
I just think that I can't remember who said it now, but one of you just said that you don't know how many people watch this crap that Netflix churns out, and I'm absolutely certain it's not that popular. Like a lot of these movies that they're bringing out. I mean, the one film that seems to be doing well at the moment is the Quiet Place 2, and I watched the first one of those, and that was actually a pretty good movie. Which is most unusual for a modern film. Like the number of modern films I like these days is like 1 out of 1,000 probably. Like most of them I simply can't watch because they're nothing more than anti-white and particularly anti-straight white male propaganda. That's all most of them are these days. And I just can't work out how even like pretty unbased normies can't see that. You know, the only bad people in any of these modern films have to be white, and they almost all have to be straight white men. It's just, you know, people can't see this.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking earlier. I watched yesterday a movie called The Edge of the World, which is based on Raja Brooke, the so-called White Raja of Borneo, who is a real historical character, but I cannot recommend the movie. The movie is a farrago of lies.
It's trash.
Yeah, it's just crap. I mean, basically, Brooke's he's supposed to not like the British, and the British are portrayed in a cartoonish manner. You know, it's just absolute shit, basically. I mean, the first half of it's not absolutely terrible, but the second half is complete crap. And I actually didn't even watch the last 15 minutes because I was so pissed off with it. I was going to break my computer screen, I think. Yeah, and that is that movie was financed by American and Chinese money and was made by the usual typical British left-wing filmmaker. You know, which is why it's a tissue of lies, basically.
The Zoomers. The Zoomers will break their monitors over computer games, while Duke will break his monitor over historically inaccurate films portraying the British badly. But you know, I've been to the graves of the White Rajas up in Sheepstall. It's a very blessed place to go.
Cool.
Really nice view as well. So, a really nice church actually. It's like a really really tiny village in like the middle of nowhere. You have to walk to. And they've got the graves of the White Rajas, and you can see there's like flags and stuff, like, you know, and there's people regularly from Sarawak who visit. They're very still very fondly held in that place. You know, it's one of you know, somewhere nice to go.
Well, Limbu with his Gurkha heritage will know that there's always a British Gurkha battalion based in Brunei. To protect Brunei. So the British, if they were hated there, we're still there for some unknown reason, you know. So we also defended Brunei and Sarawak from the Indonesians in the 1960s when they tried to take it over during what was called confrontation. And the British Army, the British Armed Forces still do most of their jungle training in that part of the world. So, you know, if we were that hated, it's amazing we're still there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, really, this stuff just gets on my nerves. And like I said, I can't watch most modern films. I just can't watch them if they're Western. The only modern films I find myself watching these days, or relatively modern, tend to be Japanese or Russian, to be honest with you. Because those guys still do historical films, which are... They're not ashamed of their past.
Weep.
Patriotic Archive is asking thoughts on the historical accuracy of Sharp. Some of it is quite accurate. Bernard Cornwall, who writes the books, knows his stuff, generally speaking. My only criticism of Sharp is the bloke he's such a simp around women. My lady, you know. That's my only criticism of Sharp. Other than that, I don't mind them. I've read pretty much all the books, I think. And the TV series wasn't terrible. I've certainly seen worse. So, yeah, that's really my opinion on that stuff. Now, moving on to our next subject, unless anyone else has got anything to say on Tolkien or modern films, etc.
They're not good.
Duke, on Japanese movies, what are your thoughts on Japanese cartoons?
I don't really watch Japanese cartoons.
I mean,
I have seen, I think, probably 2 or 3 anime films in my life. And I'm not a big cartoon fan of any description. The only cartoons I used to like were Tom and Jerry, the old ones.
Oh, based.
Like when my son was very small, I got this was years ago. I got videos of the old Tom and Jerry things because I could watch them with him and not get bored shitless. I also used to watch Thomas the Tank Engine with him. You know, the ones where Ringo Starr used to do the narration. I used to watch that with him, and I got him 101 Dalmatians, and that was a mistake because the 55th time he wanted to watch 101 Dalmatians, I'd probably seen it enough. So, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the only sort of cartoons that I would watch. And like, I tended to watch those because, like, you know, when my son was a toddler, that was the sort of thing he liked to watch. So, and he used to like to sit on my lap and watch the television. So there we go.
Yeah. Nog in the Nog for people of my age and description. That was always a great one. But apart from that, that's the last cartoon I watched anyway.
Yeah, I you know, as I said, I think that people confuse anime with what's it called? There's something else which is like pornographic.
Hentai.
Hentai. Yeah.
Of course you do.
I think some people confuse those two because a lot of anime is not that at all. But I've only, as I said, I've watched about 3 anime films in my entire life, and I'm in no great hurry to watch another one. The Japanese films I tend to watch tend to be stuff about samurai and this kind of stuff.
That's
what about Ran?
Yeah, I've watched Ran. Yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah, basically King Lear with katanas.
Yeah, it's good. It's good film. Good film. I think I've watched most of that dude's films. He's the same guy who made 7 Samurai, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, of course, they based the Magnificent Seven off of and all this kind of stuff. But there's a couple of other directors who have more recently made like samurai films. There's one called The Twilight Samurai, for example, which is a very good film. And that's part of a trilogy, which I've seen all 3 of. The Japanese still make like pretty based historical dramas. They're not ashamed of their past, unlike the people who make British films, for example. Which is why we can't make decent historical films anymore, because the people who make our movies are basically ashamed of our past for no reason whatever. There's nothing to be ashamed of in it, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, something I came across quite recently, right? I played a computer game, right? I got all soy boyish, and I played this. It's the first time I'd started up my PlayStation in probably about 2 years. But I played this game, Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yep, I've seen it. It's okay, I suppose, but it did kind of make me wonder because they really go heavy on the sort of the mythologization of sort of historic Japan. Yep.
In a way that other games that came out in the same year that featured the British Isles just do not in any way. In fact, I think there was one of these Assassin's Creed games that's set in the British Isles where you literally play a Viking and they sort of they change it around. I don't know how much because I'm not playing anything more than that one game. So,
well, I mean, I used to watch The Last Kingdom. We were talking about Sharp in the chat, you know, and that's written by Bernard Cornwell. Well, Bernard Cornwell also writes the Last Kingdom books, which is about Alfred the Great and him, you know, keeping England going against all these great Danish invasions. And I started off watching the TV series, and like, you know, there's problems with it historically. It's never been totally accurate. Actually, the books are quite accurate, but the TV series wasn't. But it was okay, and I was quite enjoying it until it got to about season 4, I think, when they made it feminist. And I watched like 2 episodes and said, no, I'm not watching this anymore. It's just crap, you know, female English warriors and all this sort of bullshit. They ruin everything. These people ruin everything. You know, the idea that a woman could fight hand to hand in that era when everything was about shield wars and this kind of stuff, you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, it used to get on my nerves when Vikings did it with shield maidens, because like the shield maidens were a Norse mythology thing. They weren't real people.
Yeah.
There's no evidence whatsoever that Viking women ever fought normally. I mean, yeah, occasionally maybe they might be fought in defense of their house, maybe, but they certainly weren't warriors. No evidence for it at all.
I remember having a friendly discussion with a lass once about a burial ground they found of a female skeleton buried with warrior items.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And she made a huge thing about how women. This is the sign that women historically were always meant to be in battle. It's a social construction that.
Mate, I'll tell you, women make shit soldiers today. So
Well,
what they would have been like in the Dark Ages, I hate.
I mean, I explained to her the basic reason why women don't go into battle, and it's because they're the reproductive bottleneck. Didn't seem to get very far past her. But
well, I mean, it's not even. It's not only that. It's they lack the size and strength and aggression to do that stuff.
Yes, but the reason they haven't evolved the size, aggression, and that sort of thing is because they haven't needed to. Because you don't send women into battle. Because if you do send them into battle, then your tribe dies out.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely correct. And of course, like if you go back to the early Bronze Age and this kind of thing, like a lot of blokes didn't reproduce. Like what was happening is that people had harems,
Well, yes. I wonder. I do wonder if it's overstated. But what likely happened was that as agriculture was growing, basically men were kicking out other men from their hunting grounds, and they produced a lot of food. So a lot of women go, "Oh well, he can feed my children."
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, women have always been that way. They still are. It's, to take us back to the stuff we were talking about a bit earlier. I mean, women have always been hypergamous. That's the way they are.
But I mean, I don't think it's a universal thing. I don't think women will do that. Like, I don't think women will necessarily say, "Oh, I'm happy to have a relationship with a guy who is also in a relationship with 16 other women." I don't think that's how it works. I think they do it out of necessity, of sort of like, well, this person can't feed me, but maybe this guy can.
Sometimes I think that's true. You got to remember, women like bastards. You have to remember this as a bloke.
Oh, of course.
Women like bastards. They really do. Trust me, I know, because I'm a bit of a bastard. I used to be anyway. But yeah. MGTOW Duke coming out after a few Bacardis. Mate, it's 7:18 in the morning. I've had 3 hours sleep, and I sure ain't drinking Bacardis. I don't even like Bacardi. But anyway, if I was drinking anything, it'd be rum, but not 7:18 in the morning when I've had 3 hours sleep. I've had one coffee since I woke up. You might recall I was streaming like 6 hours ago with Colin Liddell. But anyway, I just think that women are the way women are, and you're never going to change that. And one of the problems we've got in the modern world is that because the state will basically look after women, if they're single mothers and all this kind of stuff, that's why we've got so many single mothers.
I think you've been consuming a bit too much MGTOW content, mate. I
will say I have sympathy with the more intelligent MGTOW. I mean, I would absolutely recommend people go and watch Thinking Apes channel, for example, on YouTube. He used to be called Stardust. Yes, very, very good intelligent content, and not just about MGTOW stuff, about the world generally. He's lost his way a bit recently, but that's because he got demonetized by YouTube, and he was really depending on that income, I think, at the time.
Can we send up a flare?
Could I step in for a moment? Because
also Coltane is another bloke I would recommend. I don't totally agree with Coltane, but he's a very intelligent bloke.
Could I step in for a moment, because I really don't want the impression left on the younger people in the audience that like give up, it's all over. This is go find a sex doll or whatever and never worry about women again. That's not very helpful.
No, I'm not a supporter of that.
Yeah, once you turn like 45 or 50 and all of a sudden you realize, well, I don't have a second half of life because I didn't have any children and I didn't have a partner. like your life's over and you've got nothing to look forward to.
I don't think it's even that. I don't think it's even that. And I'm speaking as a guy who is over 50, so you know.
Yes, but you have children, and you know.
Yes,
you
I
have,
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have. There is other, you know, presumably there's other things to stick around for sure, but I would say that a big part of your life is after you've become after your young in ages is seeing the fruit of your young in ages, and a part of that is seeing your children grow up and become part of the world.
Yes, I agree with that totally. But look, from what I'm going here about what Sojourner is saying that I've just put up on the screen. Sojourner knows very well because we've done it on this stream several times, and Atman will also remember this, I'm sure. Like we quite often try to give advice to younger chaps on you know, in our kind of political neck of the woods, and we are largely traditionalists. But I think it's important that if young chaps are going to find the right woman and are going to do well in that. They've got to realize what female nature is like. It's no good going along with this hearts and flowers idea. You know, you can't be unwashed, because if you are unwashed, you'll get slapped. You'll get slapped by Lucy Brown. You know,
she's not even fit. Like, come on now.
I don't think that needs to exist outside general mainstream right-wing thinking about human nature. Because the general assumption in the right wing is that human beings are flawed. For whatever reason. I mean, of course, I think that's original sin, but you know, and everyone's flawed in their own way, and of course, women and men are flawed in their own different ways. I do not think it's very good to come out with a bludgeon for women. It's especially on young men who have possibly just been rejected.
You've got to be realistic. You've got to be realistic.
You've got to be realistic, but also young men are really, really bloody stupid, and they could, you know, they'd be listening to this just after they've been rejected by a crush or some other silly.
Move on. Women are like buses. There'll be
some
another
other
one
silly
around in a
teenage
minute.
thing, and to say, well, it's because women suck.
I think that can actually be useful, because you know, blokes have got to realise that women behave the way they do because they're women. You know,
women are like buses; they don't come on bank holidays.
Yeah, exactly. Women are like buses. There'll be another one along in a minute. It's true. Okay, if you're a young chap.
And you'll be waiting half an hour for 1 and 2 will come at once.
Yeah, and then that will happen too. You know, you'll quite often find if you're in a relationship, suddenly other women will be more attracted to you because you're in a relationship. That's a true fact. I mean, I certainly, like, you know, there are good women out there, but they're not easy to find. And if you think they're easy to find, you're really going to come unstuck.
Yeah, I would also like to disavow what Sojo's saying about creating a HAPA super race. Gentlemen, go British. If you can go British, go British. That's all I'm going to say about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not one of these. I'm not a racial nationalist, strictly speaking. I'm a British exceptionalist. I would certainly say that there are plenty of good women in Britain and in the old Commonwealth countries like Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, etc. My son is in a relationship with an American girl because he was posted in America for like several years. I think, you know, you're probably better off being with somebody like yourself. But on the other hand, this takes us back to this AA stream. And Unwashed was slagging off blokes who go out with Asian women, you know, from like China or Japan or somewhere like that. And the reason that they're attracted to those women is because they're feminine, which a lot of Western women these days are not. You know, they're simply not.
I wonder if that's as true as people say it is.
It's perhaps partially an out-group preference, I think.
I don't think it is. I think it's purely down to the fact that these women are perceived, at least, as being more feminine.
I also wonder if racial fetishization comes into this.
I don't think it does much.
There is quite a lot of that.
I don't think it does much, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think it's purely because these like Japanese, Chinese chicks. I mean, some of them are quite attractive. and B, they are perceived to be more feminine than a lot of Western women are today, because they haven't been subjected to this constant feminist propaganda as they're going through school.
I'm not sure if that's true.
Yes, like the evidence actually about the most feminist countries in the world, women also choose gender stereotype jobs more often. Like in
Yeah.
Sweden, you have more nurses per capita that are female than in the UK, which is less gender egalitarian.
Yeah, I
which
mean,
has-
sorry to interrupt, but I think you can't overprogram human biology, can you? I mean,
No,
like
you
there'll
can't.
always be, they'll always desire the high T man, which is not me. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
You get
I'm
some.
joking.
Yeah, but your
obviously not the case.
testosterone's going to go up with your subscriber base.
Yeah,
Well, I've got that.
donate to my testosterone Patreon, everyone.
I mean, look, the thing you've got to look at if you're a young British guy, for example, is that a lot of these women, by the time they're 25, they've had 59 sexual partners, you know. And that is not what you want in a wife. That is not
This
what
is
you want in a wife.
actually wrong. If you actually think that, it's because you're not looking in the right places, and you're spending your nights going to clubs, finding some woman that you can get to kiss within the minute, and are probably pulling within 10 minutes, and are probably shagging within half an hour.
Well, is it? But don't you think that's how
women are
most
easy?
behave?
But they are not the
how
rule.
most behave as young guys.
Like, okay, if you want, like, if someone's actually looking for a good, honest woman in the Western world, all you need to do is go to an evangelical Protestant church.
Yeah.
Literally all you need to do. Job
by all
done.
means, and I think you probably have a better
Bit
chance
cringe.
of
They
meeting a virgin there. But
they are waiting till marriage. They will not even consider you if you want to do anything before then. There are much more women there than there are men. It's 2 to 1. You are, if you want to do that, it's not for me. But if you want to do that, there you go.
But be
How do you
warned,
know
they
this,
might be like
Ozzy?
Elizabeth. So take care.
How do you know about this, Ozzy?
I've never been an evangelical Protestant.
So this is hearsay then, is it?
No, this is evidence-based.
Okay.
That is true, actually. I'll say this: I regularly attend an Anglican Christian church, and I think probably like I was sort of surveying the church. I didn't usually do this, but I was sort of like looking around the church to see who was there, and it's basically all just white women and minorities. I think there was about 100 people in the room. This is a largely a church with a largely student-based population. But I think there was about 100 people in the room. I'd say there was probably about 7 or 8 white dudes. The rest were just minorities and white women, basically. Yeah, I'd say.
So the odds are on your side then, if you're a white
So
chap.
my example would be at my university, the Christian Union. I mean, of course, the Christian Union is awash with evangelical Protestants. They all do the happy clappy sing song stuff that I can't abide, but it is through. Good for you, buddy. But sorry.
The darkness,
but it's something like 3 to 1 female to male. I'm sure that probably changes outside of university because there's more women than men in university. But if you're really concerned about this sort of there's no good honest women anymore, it's probably because you're looking in the club, and then I think you're a big dingus.
Listen, guys. I mean, unless things have changed overwhelmingly since I was a young chap, it's clubs and pubs where most blokes meet most women.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm going to give rather a different take. I was talking to a girl recently who has like she had half her hair like dyed blonde, like the other half was dyed like brown.
Oh my god!
And I could go to the church if I wanted to. No, she seemed like a nice girl, nice conversation, whatever. But I could go to the church. There's girls in the church who are like, yeah, I want to go. I'm coming to church to get married. But the thing is, they wear like dresses, and then like underneath the dresses they wear jeans, and that's usually like a negative sign for a relationship. I feel so.
Lots of tattoos is also a bad sign on a girl.
perhaps, I don't know, like yeah, I think that there's a happy medium. You don't want like I know they're probably becoming more increasingly in short supply, but you don't really want like a, I don't know, what's the word, sort of like Hillsong girlfriend. You want sort of like the middle ground between like total roasty and Hillsong, don't you? I mean, I don't know.
You want someone with a foot in the real world, hopefully. Like that's
Well, it's a woman, so I mean, but...
yeah.
yeah, 1-0. I'm on fire tonight, bloody Nora.
I mean, you guys, I swear. Oh my days. But
Based.
no. I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, I mean, I'm an Orthodox Christian. At the Orthodox churches, there are plenty of eligible women my age. You know, if you go to church, you're probably not going to go far wrong.
Okay, Sojourner in the chat has asked a question here that maybe you can address.
What's the proof that church-going women are good?
This is very, very simple. I can answer this in statistical terms. Women who go to church score highly in what we call religiousness. Religiousness is correlated with with the behavioral trait called slow life history strategy, which is a form of strategy in which you try not to have in which you have few partners, you have few amount of children, and you put a lot of effort into those children. Yep. So religious women in general are much less likely to get divorced. They're actually less likely to argue with their partners. They are more feminine, and they're also less likely to cuckold. This is something I
suspect that all of that would kind of like that would be common sense. You'd think that would be true about more religious women, but I'm not sure that it's actual evidence.
No. That's actual psychometric validity.
Like, I mean, it would be common sense that more religious women would be more faithful, etc., etc. Yes, I'd go along with that. But I mean, this comes back to what I was saying earlier. That you know, the women you've got to look out for as a young bloke is the one who's had 59 sexual partners by the time she's 25. You know.
Well,
you want to avoid those because they will not make good wives.
Oh, good heavens! Yes, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you even get cuckoldry statistics? It's quite funny you asked that because if you ask people anonymously if they've cheated, that actually quite willing to answer.
You get quite high answers as well. Yes.
So 2/3 of women in America who've been married have admitted to sleeping outside of the marriage.
Yep.
But this goes down if they're religious, and it goes down even further if it's a dogmatic religion like Catholicism or evangelical Protestantism, or Islam. So
Natsman Prime in the chat. I am not suggesting people only go to pubs and clubs. What I said is that's where most men meet most women. I didn't say it's what you should do.
Yeah, I mean, at the university, if some of you as students go to the library, like talk to some bird at the coffee station or whatever. I don't know.
Maybe not if she's studying. She might get a bit annoyed.
No. Oh, goodness.
You might get security.
Do not like. No, don't.
Hello.
Guys, Ataman, you haven't said much for a minute, and I've got to go do something for a couple of minutes, so I'm going to leave that with you for a second.
Has anyone here dated Eastern European women?
Oh yeah, if you count a German, yeah, sure.
I dated 2 Indians.
Wait, Germans are European. This is news to me.
Well, my last girlfriend was Eastern European, and this is something that comes up. A lot of people are like, "Oh, they're trad, they're based," and they're not really. They're like literally like 3 or 4 years behind British women, and that's kind of about it.
I mean, I wouldn't advise you to try and date girls that are based.
Yeah, that's
Ozzy's like, yeah, he knows why. No comment. We will not say anything
dating political women in general, that's so lame.
Wrong. That's wrong.
That's so lame.
Yeah.
Like, you really want someone to post on your 4chan boards with you, or do you want someone to like I don't know, take a walk with you in a stroll in the park and talk about some dumb shit that you don't care about. I want the second one. I do not want someone who posts.
For chat.
Well, I wouldn't really mind. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't like
I wouldn't
in
mind
terms
my
of.
4chan troll.
There was a girl. There was a girl I used to speak to who was left wing, but like I knew I was right wing, and we used to talk about politics sometimes. I mean, you know, it's whatever. If I feel quite knowledgeable on the subject, it's a perfectly reasonable interest to have. I think for any gender, but when you're like really dogmatic about politics, it's a bit of a strange. I think to an extent, it's a bit of a strange what do you call it, personality type, even in men. But the less said about that, the better.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I mean-
I just have this image of you, like you're 35 years old, and you come home and you greet your kids and your wife goes, "So what base things did you do today, darling?"
Right, but the negative to dating an apolitical woman is you end up with these weird political takes. Like one day you just learn they're a Lib Dem voter or something, and you're like, oh fuck.
But the thing is with women, to a large extent, they have the politics of the last guy who piped them. I mean, it's just the
Yeah.
facts.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have some pretty strange combinations.
If you're a decent bloke, you will generally find that your woman will tend to fall into line with your own political thinking, because that's what girls do.
Well, most people I know fall in line with my political thinking because I'm empirically right about everything. So,
Gosh.
And you've got over 1,000 subscribers.
of
so-
course, yeah, no,
I mean,
1,000.
you
What is it?
definitely go into a
Trust me,
club
bro.
and say,
But
"Oh,
yeah,
yo,
honestly, guys, I wouldn't concern myself too much about what a girl's politics is, unless, of course, she's some nutcase feminist, obviously. But I mean, if she's just an average woman, I wouldn't worry about it, because what you'll find is, if you're in a steady relationship and it goes on for a while, she will tend to adopt your political positions. So it shouldn't be the major thing you worry about as a young guy. That's always been my experience, is that over time, like when I've been with a woman for long enough, she's tended to like adopt similar politics to me.
Well, I mean, I don't really like. I don't know. Like as long as I don't know. I talk about it quite a lot because I'm frankly a bit of a spurg. But I mean, like, I don't really care if like you agree with me, as long as like I don't know. I talk. I'm going to bring up the other women I speak to. I talk to my sister quite a lot about politics, and she doesn't agree with me on very many things at all. But I mean,
Yeah, but that's your sister. That's different.
she
But
comes
that's
up with
just
really
it's
really
not
weird
your-
takes now because she's like heard of loads of my reactionary talking points and has like adapted them to be left wing. It's really strange. So she's like, yeah, things move leftward, and that's a good thing. The Cthulhu makes them slowly, and that's a good thing.
She won't be saying that in 10 years' time when things have moved even more leftwards.
No, we're
Anyway.
gonna switch around. I'm gonna develop such a hatred of reactionaries. I'm gonna become a lefty. And you know, she's been watching Abby Shapiro recently. So I mean,
Oh,
what we've got on the pipeline.
Oh, no.
so-
oh, remember that VC lads? Oh,
No, we won't mention that.
we won't mention that. Okay, lads.
There we go. There we go. Tough Wagon in the chat has made a suggestion.
But there are a lot of really, really attractive Jewish birds.
Oh,
But-
Yeah, but the reason they get them in the IDF is that they conscript them. So you kind of have to do a certain amount of military service as a woman in Israel. So they're going to get all of them. Whereas, like in the UK forces, you get the chicks who join the UK forces. You know, and enough said about that, in my opinion. But yeah. Okay, let's move on. And the next thing is two related subjects I wanted to bring up. The first is we had Joe Biden suggesting that the far right was actually the biggest threat to America, bigger even than Islamic terrorism, etc., etc. So, where that comes from, I have no idea whatsoever, apart from the fact it's a complete lie.
I mean, it depends what you mean, though.
Yeah, depends.
Because it is an actual problem for the current United States, because the current United States is basically trying to hold two vastly different political messes together. You know, you've got flyover with its which is, you know, the classic old white American small house market sort of thing. and then you've got the huge cosmopolitan metropolises in the east and west coast, and of course the far right. Well, let's put aside
But let's be honest, that the actual far right, even in America, is absolutely tiny.
Oh yeah, no. So what I was just about to say was that, like, putting aside the ultra spurgs like Richard Spencer and all those cocks.
Spencer's a third.
He's just I don't care if he is or he isn't. He's a cock.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dick.
Yeah, agreed.
But like the actual like hardline Republicans who are like they are basically now incompatible with the place the United States intends to go.
Yep.
So, in a sense, Joe Biden is right.
Mm.
In a sense.
Yeah, I see what I see what you're getting at there. Adam, what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I don't actually divert much from what Ozzy said anyway. I mean,
to be fair,
Biden's
what Ozzy said was rather de-sharpened by the fact that it says Abigail betrayed us when she got breast reductions on the screen. Sorry. Whenever Ataman speaks, it's always an amazing take. So please do carry on.
She cut to Joe Biden's tastes of a little bit too young women. Something like that.
Yeah, Joe Biden seems to like very little girls, sadly. Sorry, Ataman, you were interrupted. Carry on, please.
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, like from Biden's perspective, obviously, white supremacist terrorism is the number one threat because he's worried about what can de-seat him and his people. And it's not going to be. But I've literally just been sent. I mean, this is worldwide, but I've just been sent a list of the most active perpetrators of terrorist actions worldwide, 2019, based on the number of attacks from my informant, Deep Throat, in on the front lines, and sucking cock, and he's and there's nothing even remotely Western on this list anywhere.
Yep,
there's a lot of communist stuff, a lot of communist party actions.
Yeah. I will. Let's bring this back to the UK a bit. I take it all you guys have heard about the bloke from Maidenhead who got 5 years in prison for owning 3 books that it's entirely legal to buy from Amazon.
Yes.
I did get those, but, and this is where the point at which you call me a libtard. One of them was a terrorism manual.
Yeah, I mean,
I do agree. Yeah,
and there was no evidence he was going to use them at all.
Yes, but it is
whatsoever he was going to do anything wrong.
I mean, it's a book against the state. Of course, if you're going to buy a terrorist manual, there has to be some kind of precautions. Whether you're going to use it for your, whether you're going to use it to make a bomb.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting everyone just because I've got the Chad energy because I've got 1,000
He's
subs.
got 1,000.
He's got 1,000 subs.
He's got the 1K.
Yeah. And anyway, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know. I'm not sure if this guy's the right hill to die on. Like, I've kind of got to the point where like Nazis have annoyed me so much. I just want to look.
I am not suggesting that he's a hill to die on. I'm suggesting that 5 years is a bit overboard. Particularly when actual Islamic terrorists in the UK get lesser sentences than that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think preventative justice is, I mean, particularly in this circumstance, is a tiny bit absurd, particularly if the terrorism manual is legal. So, like, maybe instead you just say, we're going to keep the police pointed on you, or something like that.
He probably would have done something, to be honest.
I mean, yeah.
You could tell how bad he was because he had an Australian flag in his bedroom. I mean, he must have been a bad guy.
Oh.
I just think it's entirely hypocritical to give that guy 5 years for nothing, basically. It's a thought crime is what he was guilty of, really.
Some PA, wasn't he threatening his ex and brown kids?
No idea.
Oh. If that's the case, yeah.
Abigail betrayed us when she got her breast reductions.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't forget, this show is supposed to be entertaining, gents. You must
Yeah.
remember this show is supposed to be entertaining as well as anything else. But yeah, okay. So I just think it's hypocritical, and it was not in proportion to what he had done.
Of course.
That was my real point. And I'm now going to move us on to something that I didn't really get to talk to Colin Liddell about, but I wanted to because he lives there. And that is Japan as a 98% ethno-state.
You did talk to him about it.
Yeah, you did.
I did a little bit, but not as much as I wanted to because it was towards the end of the stream. So, like I said, Japan, 98% ethno-state, and apparently that's fine because they're not white.
Yeah, I mean,
the reason is because white people are very good at feeling bad for things, and Japanese people don't give a toss.
yeah, they don't give a toss.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it because of that? I don't know. There's probably quite complex reasons as to why
I mean,
Japan
it's
has...
generally culture. I mean, coming from an Asian person myself here, the authority, the baseline of authority here.
I thought you disowned your Nepalese ancestors.
Yes, I did disown that. Yes,
we all need to check our white privilege here and allow Limbu to speak.
Yes,
Sorry.
of course. The case for Asians is that it's the culture itself is I don't give a toss. It's either my family or death. So for the case for Shinzo Abe's government is that they didn't allow any migration in because that was going to affect the community and the people. So, but it's base in a way, but I think what Colin Liddell pointed out was that there's lots of hidden migration, for example, for the cheap Japanese labor force. So that does need to be mentioned.
But what they tend to do in Japan is that, like, if you go over there as a foreigner and to work, you tend to get a limited contract, so you can only be there for a couple of years and then you have to leave.
Oh yeah, that's the case. Especially also in Japan, they have these things where it says Japanese only buses, Japanese only restaurants.
Yep.
Yeah, because due to culture, they don't want to disrespect the Westerners. So.
Yeah, and they have regular protests outside, like tourist hotels and things like that, which they say, "Why don't you go home?" Which, to be honest,
I follow a British guy who's in Japan, and his channel on YouTube, which is quite amusing. And like he's been there for about 10 years, and he really likes it. But he said that like he'll never be Japanese, which is fair enough.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I mean,
unlike Britain, whereas if you move to Britain, like they'll say once they've been here 3 years, oh yeah, they're as English as you, mate, which is obviously nonsense.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Yeah.
I would also say that the thing in Japan is also somewhat related to the fact that they still make based historical movies. They're not ashamed of their past.
I would say that's a symptom. I think it's a general, more fundamental assumption of stuff happened in the Japanese have done historically atrocious things like the rape of Nanking.
Yeah, absolutely right.
But China brings it up every year. They say, "Oh, you were so horrible," and Japan replies, "Problem, libtard." So and so why that is probably runs deeper than that. I don't know. I don't know instantly what it would be, but it's probably to do with the fact that Western European people have a special tendency towards liberalism and this idea of fairness.
Yes.
And we've at some point along the road we have decided that everything on Earth should be equal, and if it's not equal, that means there is a problem. But the assumption everywhere else is that there are winners and losers. Get on with it.
I mean, you can blame the Enlightenment here. I mean, that's my honest opinion. Your Russo's, your Locke's. I mean, it's them.
Yeah, sure. That's a long way back. It's part of the root of it for certain. Just to Suno's Hammer in the chat says no one really believes they are English. It's all moral posturing. Well, I'm sorry, mate, but I'm English. If I'm asked, I'm English, and I am English. So I don't agree with that at all. What do you guys think? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Adam and the rest of you, apart from Limbu, will turn around and say they're Englishmen.
Well,
Apart from Ozzy, who's a Scot, of course.
yes. I mean, it reminds me of this hilarious scene from Victoria, which is a show that I do like. I mean, I know it's a bit of a romantic toff, but I like it anyway. And Lawrence Fox, who plays one of the prime ministers, I can't remember his name. The French king is in refuge, and he says, "You're so charming, sir. If I wasn't French, I would like to be English." To which he replies, "Well, if I wasn't English, I'd like to be, well, English." I think it's a very nice little quip.
If I wasn't English, I'd like to be Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish. If I wasn't English,
or English,
or English,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Adam, would you say you're an Englishman?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
are you merely morally posturing as an Englishman? Because I don't think that's true at all. I just don't.
No, I'm an Englishman. Well, I mean, the thing is, I'm kind of like a bit of a sort of English nationalist more than I'm a British one.
Boo, boo.
Yeah, fair enough.
Unfederal.
Listen, we don't all have to agree. If we all agree, this would be a boring show.
I respect people who are bereaved by the Scots Nats and decide, you know what?
I get slagged off all the time for being a British exceptionalist by people who are often English. I get slagged off by a lot of Englishmen for supporting Britain. I just think that England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland together are much stronger together than they would be separately.
Yeah, I mean, my personal perspective is I have ancestors who were in the cabinet. A big part of my family history is being in administering the Raj and other things like that. I'm definitely, while I am by blood a Scot, I am definitely very British in culture. I think that's pretty discernible by my mannerisms. So
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever actually cognitively abandon the Union because it's a big part of who I am and where I come from. I mean, for goodness sake, my dad was born in Rhodesia.
Yeah.
So there's
based.
Well, but regardless of our personal nasturtiums about imperialism, which of course I'm not a huge fan of, but I can't. I know you are.
Still an imperialist. Still,
I know you are, but I can never.
We did far more good than harm in the world. Far more.
For me, that's not the point. But either way, it's a big part of where I come from is where my roots are. So I can never say I'm a Scottish nationalist. Just not going to happen.
Listen, Tommy Hill in the chat, you've said this before, and I'm afraid you and I are just going to have to disagree on that one. Okay. I mean, I am an Englishman. I love England, but England is much stronger together with Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland than it would be on its own. That's just a fact. All four of the nations that make up the United Kingdom are stronger together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I'm a CANZOC supporter. You know, I'd like stronger links between Britain and Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. So
Boo.
And like, let's look at Rhodesia, for example. Look what a wonderful country Rhodesia used to be. It used to be the breadbasket of Africa.
Yes, based.
And what a shithole it is now since Mugabe took it over. I mean, sorry, that's just a fact.
I mean, the personal
thing, when I lived in South Africa, people used to take old transistor radios when they went up to Zimbabwe, as it then was, for a holiday, because they would get a fortune from poor bloody Zimbabweans who couldn't even get secondhand radios.
I mean, my personal thing about a separatism would be that the countries that came to form the Union, Scotland, England, and Wales, and to a lesser extent Northern Ireland, have fundamentally, their cultures have changed since when they unified, and now their cultures are much more about the unity between them than they ever were, than they were before the unification. And so I think it would be defeating the purpose to be separatist because, for example, imperial culture is a largely Scottish invention, which has now been exchanged and with English culture, and for example, the north of England and Scotland calls scones, and everyone else seems to call them. What do you Southern English people call them? Scones, don't they, or something like that?
Scones, yes.
Yeah. But like, you know, there has been a bleed over now, and I don't think that our cultures are entirely separable. I think there's just been SNP poisoning and Tony Blairism that has made us think that we're so bloody different. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about this before, but I think there's a quite large Irish immigrant input into the SNP.
Fenians.
There just is. I mean, you know, people, other Scotsmen have told me that. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean that thing about the refugee in Glasgow the other week. Lo and behold, my surprise! It's in the west of Glasgow and not the east of Glasgow.
Yeah. Where you would have found the provisional IRA sign that's graffiti and stuff in the 1980s, you know. Yeah, absolutely right. Big Dave, Kanzuk is a pipe dream. I actually think it depends what you mean by Kanzuk. I mean, the idea that we're going to become one single nation. Yeah, I think that probably is certainly in the foreseeable future. But I think closer ties in terms of trade, the movement of people, and defence, etc. That's not a pipe dream at all. I mean, the Royal Navy is in the process of sending a carrier task group out here, and it's going to go through the Mediterranean, the Gulf of Arabia, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, obviously to show the Chinese. And then it's going to come to Australia, where they're going to do exercises with Australian and Japanese and American warships, etc. It's the biggest British naval deployment to Australia for probably 50 years. Britain's also reopening the Royal Navy base in Singapore, and they're going to permanently base Royal Navy ships there. So I don't think it's quite so much as a pipe dream as you're saying in that sense. And certainly I know quite a lot of Australians, because Australia is feeling a bit threatened by China at the moment, are quite looking forward to a large British naval task group actually coming out here.
Yeah, get rid of the can in Kanzuk, and might be something quite exciting.
Oh, listen, there's a lot of base Canadians. We have Canadians on our Discord unit. No, there aren't enough. Well, there's not enough base British people either. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to do this show, would we?
I mean, the thing is, though, is that like I cannot see Canada lasting, because while Britain had Brexit, Canada re-elected Trudeau. Like, this is
only just.
If you
only just. That's a fact. And also, their opposition is in a terrible state at the moment. Like, the opposition in Canada is so fractured. And they also suffer from the same thing that we do, and that Australia does, in that the right-wing parties are actually not right-wing at all. You know.
But that's normal, though, for Western political parties. They all cut to capitalism.
Well, it's normal in the modern era, but it wasn't normal in years gone by.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
I mean, my point was that if we were to form a political union with Canada, Australia, and New Zealand at this point in time, in which we basically said we will allow migration between us, but not from outside, I would be really uncomfortable with letting Canada in that union.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying about that. I mean, to some degree, the same thing would be true of Australia, and the same thing's true of Britain. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
you know, you've got to look at it from all those points of view. I'm in favour of freedom of movement, but I'm not sure I'm in favour of freedom of residence. I think that's what you've got to be careful about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sojourner in the chat has said $3 billion worth of Royal Navy equipment is going to get sunk in the South China Sea for America's benefit. Not going to happen. My son's on one of those ships. It's going to have a Royal Navy. It's got the Royal Navy flagship HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is a very large aircraft carrier, which now has aircraft. It's going to have two Type 45 Ed. Actually, a third of the F-35 is built by the British. So.
Wow, a third.
We're
winning, you guys.
Well, I don't understand the problem with that, mate. Honestly, I don't. But anyway, no, let me finish. We'll talk about this in a sec. It's got the aircraft carrier. It's going to have 2 Type 45 air defense destroyers, which are the most advanced air defense destroyers in the West, including American ships. It's going to have 2 Type 23 anti-submarine warfare frigates. It's also going to have a nuclear-powered hunter-killer astute-class submarine. And frankly, anyone who tries to take that task force on, including China, would be rather foolish. It's a very powerful force. And I don't believe for a second China will try to. But if they did, the idea that the Royal Navy would simply get sunk is just not true. I'm sorry, it's not.
I think that's probably contextual on what the deployment is.
Well, don't forget, there's also going, when they get out into the more dangerous areas like the South China Sea, there's going to be Australian and Japanese warships and American warships joining them as well.
Well,
it's going to be a very powerful fleet. It's not going to be something that anyone is going to be able to, like, oh yeah, we'll go and sink those guys.
Well, it's not about going sinking those guys with your own navies. It's about sinking them with very cheap, easy to manufacture, ground-launched anti-ship missiles.
But there are that's simply not true. What you've got to remember is if you're going to try and hit a ship with a ground-launched missile, you have to know where the ship is. You have to work out where that ship's going to be by the time you actually give the orders to the missile, and the missile then gets readied and takes off and then lands. It's a much more complicated thing than people think. And also, there are going to be warships with that task group which can actually shoot down missiles. So again, it's much more complicated than people realise. And that Royal Navy task group, whilst I would prefer it to have 4 anti-submarine frigates and not 2, it's a very powerful force. And once you add the Royal Australian Navy and the Japanese and the Americans into the equation, I don't think the Chinese are going to mess with it, frankly. And the whole point of it is to say, look, guys, if you do try and do stuff over here to China, it's not just going to be the Royal Australian Navy or just the Japanese naval self-defense force you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be all these countries. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah, I mean, sure, that sounds like a very nice thing, but
it's the whole point. It's the whole point.
Yeah, but I think going into the future, China is inevitably just going to become more powerful.
Well, I've had this argument many times, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I will be absolutely amazed if there's not a war against China in the next 10 years. And the reason I'll be amazed is unless we do it in the next 10 years, we won't win.
Yeah.
If we do it, if we fought, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Americans, the British, the Australians, the Japanese, maybe the South Koreans. If we fought China now in a naval and air war, I'm not talking about landing troops in China. If we fought a naval air war against China now, we would win. 10 years' time, we won. And that's why I'm absolutely convinced that there is going to be a war with China in the next 10 years. I think the Chinese will start it because I think the leader of China at the moment is determined to take Taiwan.
Damn you, Winnie the
Pooh. Winnie the Pooh moment. Yeah, while he's still in power, he's determined to take Taiwan, and I think that's going to kick that off.
Okay,
because
so who cares if he takes Taiwan, though?
Well, everyone, everyone, and especially the Americans, because if the Americans allowed Taiwan to be taken, then people are all talking about America's time as an empire is coming to an end, and yeah, sure it is, but I think it's going to take longer than people think it will. But if they allowed Taiwan to be taken by China, yeah, they'd be broken as a nation.
So America falls, but who cares? I don't like America.
No, Britain has some certain influence in Taiwan, I do believe. They have certain
there's that, and also
technology.
There's that, and we have an alliance with Australia as well. We also have an alliance with Australia,
Yeah, okay. So you play a defensive game with our brothers in the Commonwealth, but I really can give a toss about Taiwan. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
but this goes back to the stuff we were talking when we were opening this subject. I don't like everything or even most things that America does. in terms of foreign policy. I've never been a supporter of the ridiculous wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which achieved nothing for a load of our blokes getting killed and maimed. I've never did support that. But the situation over Taiwan is rather different. And we can't simply change our alliances because we'd like to. HMS Sheffield was sunk by a single Axis missile during the Falklands conflict. Yes, it was. It was on its own. The British had no airborne early warning, which was how come the Argentinians were able to get close enough to launch it. And there was also some other stuff going on Sheffield, which the Sheffield wasn't as prepared as it should have been. Very brave. They were very brave guys, and like most of the guys were absolutely doing their job. But one or two of the officers made some fuck-ups on Sheffield, to be honest with you. But anyway. And also, like I said, Britain did not have any form of airborne early warning in the Falklands, which means that, you know, because of the fact that the Earth is round, it's not flat, as some people will try and tell you, you can't see what's going on below the horizon unless you've got an aircraft or a helicopter with radar in it. And we didn't have that in the Falklands War. It was the biggest weakness of the British forces. We do now. So that wouldn't happen again.
We hope.
So yeah, Adam, anything to say on that stuff?
No.
Anybody else?
No, not really.
How about the Mr. 1008 subs?
1009 now.
Oh,
he'll be getting rich on super chats in a couple of weeks.
No, don't worry.
Bro. March to
Bling,
Whitehall.
bling.
he's gonna
March
do
to
a Settler's
Whitehall,
Lament.
bro.
Bling bling catching. Anyway, I don't sell black pills. Sorry.
Oh.
Chinese war.
Biaki, who I think is an Australian, is saying in the chat that they can't rely on the USA anymore. I think to some degree there's quite a lot of Australians think that. There's quite a lot of Australians think that. And I don't blame them with Biden at the helm, to be honest with you.
I mean, what is Biden's foreign
Adam, we don't have AEW. Yes, we do have AEW now. And they didn't know. They tried to get the Sea Kings with AEW ready for the Falklands. They weren't ready before the Argentines surrendered. We do now have Merlin helicopters. We do now have Merlin helicopters that have AEW on them, and they're based on HMS Queen Elizabeth. So, you know.
To answer Ozzy's question on what was America's foreign policy, I believe they're trying to police the world through pragmatic left-wing viewpoints. Yeah, that's the foreign
they're
policy
trying to
of
sell
America.
so they're basically trying to sell rainbow-painted Coke cans.
Yes, they are. Essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, you know, when they did that missile strike on Syria, and everyone did the memes with the Black Lives Matter on the American missiles. You know, it's just crap. You know.
Oh yes, this recent one with Biden. Yeah. I mean, my main question was more sort of does Biden like have allies he wants? Because I know he doesn't really care about Britain anymore or alliances with Western Europe.
Well, apparently he's coming to UK to meet the Queen. I read.
Oh yeah, on the
that's tradition. That's tradition. That's happened since time immemorial. Well, not time immemorial, but it's happened for a good century or two. My main interest would be like, so if Biden wants to put Europe to the side, you know, which he may want to do for a good reason, who are his new allies?
Well, they've been tilting towards the Pacific from the Atlantic for quite some time now, anyway.
Yeah.
But
which is another reason that they can't afford to let Taiwan fall to the communists.
Yes, but then you would think that they would want to be friendly with Australia and trying to protect, and they would be putting more investments in the Southeast Asia and things like that. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know about it if they are. So
they're certainly basing more of their navy on the Pacific side now than they used to. Like they're kind of returning to the position they had prior to World War II, when like the majority of the US Navy was actually based in the Pacific, and they're kind of going back to that. And as I said earlier, like Britain is also kind of going back east of Suez again, which is why we're reopening the Royal Navy base in Singapore, etc., and going to permanently base warships there. So, you know, that's just happening.
Yeah. But
Who's got the Joe Biden baby balloon already?
Oh God! I mean, I detest Biden. Like, I detest him, but I try not to talk about him too much, just because there are so many shows on YouTube which are like 90% American. You know, and I just think there's so much American stuff, and I try to do British and Old Commonwealth stuff because that's something that most people don't do.
just show a friendly sign to Joe Biden as he drives by, telling him to wake up. That will do the thing.
Oh, listen, as far as I'm concerned, he's a senile pedophile, apart from anything else. But, you know, there we go.
Shots fired.
Joe Biden.
Told you I don't like him. Let's not pretend that the Australian thing actually means any more. There must be another reason. No, I'm sorry, Sojourner. I think I mean, part of the reason it means something more now is because of Brexit. You know, given Britain isn't in the EU anymore, we have absolutely increased our trade and defence ties with Australia and Canada and to some degree New Zealand, although the horse-faced feminist is trying to stop that. But like, for example, the Australia and Canada are both buying the new British frigate. They're going to build it themselves, but they're buying the British design. So you know, this stuff is happening. It's not something I'm making up. Why though? Well, why? Because having left the EU, the obvious thing for Britain to do is to draw closer to the nations that we have the most in common with, which is obviously Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. You know, we have blood ties with those guys, with these guys. We have historical ties. We have cultural ties. We're doing increasing trade. I mean, like Britain's done a pretty big trade deal with Australia already, actually.
Although the trade deal is not
I don't know why it's not. I don't know why it's not obvious. It's obvious to me, but I mean, you know.
Well, I mean, I think it's just because of our ties to Australia, isn't it? That's why it matters. But...
Yeah.
I mean, how many people in Britain have relatives in Australia or Canada? I would presume probably most.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most British people have a relative either in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand.
I mean, I would caution though over signifying what a trade deal is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Look, it's a trade deal, but there's also, as I said, there's quite a lot of talk of what did it used to be called? There was kind of like a version of NATO which was around this part of the world and included Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and that kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of talk. Yeah, there's a lot of talk of that being like revived, but this time probably including Japan and maybe South Korea as well as Australia and what have you. So I actually think this stuff is going to become more solid over time.
Yeah, sure. I think it would be actually quite interesting to see if Russia takes a stand against China. I
think they have to eventually. They're natural enemies. They're natural enemies. They can't stay friends for long.
And I think that would be actually quite a nice little boon. I mean, of course, if the Biden's foreign policy of Russia bad goes away, then I mean, again, I'm showing my true Russian colours here because I actually think I think Russians are quite cool. But
well, like I've said before, I think we should be pretty neutral towards Russia. I don't think we can make them our ally, and I think Russia could become a threat again at some stage. You know, they're not natural allies of Britain by any means. But at the moment, I think we should be entirely neutral towards them. Like I'm not anti-Russian at all, really. Sojo, there were plenty of people in South Africa and Rhodesia. Yeah, but what you got to remember is that in South Africa and Rhodesia, in South Africa anyway, the English-speaking people were a minority of the white people there. You know, the Afrikaans guys were not English-speaking, so it wasn't such a big deal in that sense. And also, of course, you know, South Africa had a majority black population anyway, so it's a slightly different situation.
Well,
And
it ended
I support South Africa. I lived there for 15 years, for God's sake. But well, like I said, it's a different situation. Like the majority of people in Australia are of British or Irish descent.
yeah.
Beef.
I don't.
I don't make anything up, Sojo. Listen, mate, if you're going to, I find it very annoying. You won't come on the show, but you'll sit there like doing shit from the sidelines.
Keyboard warrior, mate.
Yeah.
What on earth?
No, mate, Sojourner, that is simply just not true. The majority of people in Australia are not Irish. That's not true at all.
Yeah, that's actually wrong. I think
Yeah.
that's actually,
Paddies.
from a DNA level, that's wrong. This is me.
There's quite a lot of Irish people in Australia, but there's quite a lot of Irish people in Britain,
The mythical Anglo-Celtic.
Survive the heat in Australia.
Yeah, I'm a supporter of the Anglo-Celtic race for sure. I mean, don't forget, Cornwall is Celtic, Wales is Celtic, a lot of Scotland is, not all of it, mostly the Highlands, and obviously there's Northern Ireland as well. So but yeah, I'm a supporter of the Anglo-Celtic people, absolutely.
I think we can use that term once Western Britain is resubjugated.
Oh, listen, I'm one of those people who one day, a long time in the future, no doubt, when Ireland wakes up and stops importing so many third world people, I'd like to see Southern Ireland join in some sort of loose trade thing with the UK for sure.
Well, an Irish chap, a Western Briton, I should say, chap I know, who's a loyal Western Briton, has said that apparently the Irish Prime Minister has proposed a unitary deal with Britain, which is basically something like the European Union, in which they basically leave the European Union and develop even closer trade ties with Britain, and he described it almost as vassalship.
They're based.
And he was really, really quite excited about this.
Little known fact. The Guinness family that started the Guinness brewery supported continued British rule over Ireland. So in fact, they were unionists. Don't tell any Irish people that they might get quite upset. But it's true.
Yeah. Well, it was like I was talking to Sojo in the Discord last week. When World War II broke out, about a third of the Irish Defence Forces deserted, went north and joined the British Army, or the Navy, or the Air Force.
I mean, I think the important thing that you need to remember is something also that Biaki has just brought up in the chat. The average Aussie who has Irish or Anglo background.
Yeah, absolutely right. I totally agree with that.
And I think that just goes round for people in general. People don't go, oh, well, this is my history. And
no, they don't.
So I would be very cautious about advancing Kanzuk on the basis that, well, they're British, innit?
No, but I wouldn't advance it on that. I'd just advance it on the case that we have a lot of stuff in common.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of stuff in common. I mean, yeah, blood is in it, but I mean, there's also shared history. There's also shared culture. There's also similar political and legal systems and all this kind of stuff. And like it makes sense for Australia and Britain to be friends in the world.
Mr. John McNamara turns out to be a Western Briton.
My
apologies.
Especially with his avatar. Who would have believed that? We actually get quite a lot of Irish people who watch this show. So
Yeah, I mean, if I would only support reintegrated Ireland if they wanted it, and if they don't, then they don't. If they don't, then they don't. Fortunately, it looks like Northern Ireland will stay British, and I'm happy to. I'm really happy about that.
Yeah,
But
totally agree.
Ulster is British.
But if the Republic wants to stay the Republic, I mean that's their loss. What can I say?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Britain remains in our memory.
I think that it would make sense for Britain and Ireland to certainly have some sort of trade deal for sure.
Yeah.
Sojourner's going to come out with his anti-Irish stuff now. And like I'm, as I said earlier, I think that half the trouble with the SNP is it's a lot of it is more Irish than Scottish. But there we go.
Well, it didn't used to be.
Yeah, but I think today it is.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be back in the day that it was basically full of Nazis within the Kirk, but now it's an atheist Irish Fenian cult. I mean, that it's not entirely true though, because you do get the Tartan Tories within the SNP, and they're quite a lot of fun, but they are quite they are most certainly not Irish. Put it that way.
I think we've spoken about this before, but I think the answer to the SNP has to be some sort of indigenous Scottish unionist party. Yeah, an indigenous Scottish unionist party has to be the answer.
Yes,
it's not the Conservatives. No.
No, good heavens, no.
No, not all.
So I think that's what's got to happen in Scotland for it to become secure once again within the union.
Yeah, if you got rid of the Scottish Parliament and instead had Scotland represented by a unionist party, which advocated for Scottish interests within the union, within Westminster, it'd be much better than having Scottish Tory MPs basically back up what the English Tory MPs want.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I definitely think that's the way to go. I think it's also to a lesser degree the same thing that should happen in Wales, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the Ulster Unionists, maybe something like that is what you need.
Yeah. Although not the UUP, because the UUP is
gay.
I'm a bit more of a the DUP, however.
Not a big fan, but all right, fair enough.
Tommy Hill in the chat has asked me a question here. Prior to World War One, Scots, Welsh, and Irish troops combined outnumbered English troops in the British Army. I don't think that's true, to be honest with you. It wouldn't have been very far off, but I don't think it's quite true.
Yeah, because there has been a lot of depopulation of the home countries.
Yeah.
But that's been going on since the Highland clearances. So.
But I mean, the Scottish part of the British Army was quite large.
Oh,
the Welsh, and the Welsh and Irish part prior to World War One was also large. But I think there would have been more English troops. But there was certainly the Scots, Welsh, and Irish were a large minority. I think it would be the correct way to look at it. And as Biarki says, there were loads of Ulster soldiers in World War One. Yes, there were, but there were also loads of soldiers from the south of Ireland in World War One, because
lots of upstanding Irish guards who were loyal to the nation.
Absolutely right. And even today, like quite a lot of Irish guardsmen actually come from the Republic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right, guys. Now we're going to finish at 2:30 because this is my second stream of the day, as far as I'm concerned. I've only had 3 hours sleep. So I'm going to ask people for their closing thoughts, and I'm going to start with Limbo. And while Limbo's doing that, I'm going to go and do something for a couple of minutes. So Limbo, closing thoughts, please.
Oh, all right. Nice stream. Nothing much, really. Nice chat. Big up, lads. Big up, Big Dave.
Return to Big Dave.
We love Big Dave.
Go and subscribe to Royal Oak.
Oh, thank you very much.
Already.
Get him 1K and 10 subs,
Yeah.
That's very kind of you. But yeah, I don't know. It's nice to be. I don't know. I wasn't expecting for it to get that high, actually. But I mean, people always say, don't know. People always say that, I know, but
you totally started that thinking, oh, I'm gonna get like 10,000 subs one day, maybe, and like people will actually listen to me, and I'll go on academic agent streams. Don't give me this.
One thing I will say, I mean, like, I'm going to say this right at the end because not many people are watching. Like, there was someone who got in contact with me yesterday saying, you know, a load of people were whining about me in a certain place that won't be mentioned. But, you know, all these people, you know, they built their platform off the back of like, you know, they got all the shout outs and all those Telegram channels. And, yeah, have I done that? No, you know, I've done it all by myself. No one's given me shout outs. I've built an audience completely organically. You people like, he's counter signaling the movement. Like, fuck you, bitch. I don't care.
Well, I've had you on here quite a few times, Mr. Soon-to-be Super Chats.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I haven't had any shout outs from Collett or Laura Towner, have I?
No. God, I hope
So
not.
there you go. You can know who I'm talking about now if you weren't already aware. Okay, that'll do.
So, your closing thoughts, Royal Oak. Apart from the fact that you've got over 1,000 subs, of course.
Of course, yeah, that's one of my closing thoughts. But it's been a good chat. We've talked about some good things. I want to say like John McNamara is kicking off in the chat. But you know, it's all about, you know, those common ties between the Irish and the British. You know, we're technically the same underneath pretty well, other than, you know, the Anglo-Saxon sort of thing. But you know, if England wasn't here, you would be kind of Anglo-Saxon, I suppose. That's probably where the Saxons would have settled. But interesting timeline. But you know, Ireland and Britain, you know, like you're next to us. You're you know, we're the only country you border. You just gotta. It's more the enemy you know than the foe you don't. But those are my closing thoughts. Good stream.
It's a bit like the USA and Canada or Australia and New Zealand in some respects, I think.
Yeah.
The situation with Britain and Ireland, you know, you always get this. So yeah, liberals, all of you, according to Sargon. Well, I'm not a liberal, mate, but anyway.
I'm
a liberal. Sargon, come on my YouTube channel. I'm a liberal.
Well, I'm certainly I'm a reactionary traditionalist. I'm certainly not a liberal. So Ozzy, closing thoughts, mate?
Sojo, you're a liberal. How about that? No.
Oh, based.
It's church tomorrow. Everyone go to church if you believe in God. And if you don't believe in God and need a girlfriend, go to an evangelical church.
Happy clappy.
Aside from that, long live West Britain, and let's be friends with Putin. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Our saviour, he can move the mountains.
Oh God, please don't.
Our God is mighty to save.
Okay.
Mighty to save.
You're going to lose a sub if you carry on like this, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I've got 1,010 where those came from.
I'm actually subscribed to you, but I won't be if you keep singing. Adam, closing thoughts, mate.
I've got nothing. I'm out.
All right, mate. So what I would say is please like and subscribe, guys. Because I don't have 1,000 subscribers, unlike Royal Oak. I should have, but I don't. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to play us out with a bit of a tune. And because I decided we were going to be talking about women today and Irish women and all this kind of stuff, hopefully this will be a bit appropriate.
Gorgeous women.
Hopefully this will be somewhat appropriate.
You're the cause of my woe, since my bonny light horseman to the wars he did go. Broken hearted I'll wander, broken hearted I remain, since my bonny light horseman in the wars he was slain. Then Boney commanded his armies to stand, and proud waved his banners all gaily and grand. He levelled his cannons right over the plain, and my bonny light horseman in the wars he was slain. Oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, you're the cause of my woe, since my bonny light horseman to the wars he did go. Broken-hearted I'll wander, broken-hearted I remain, since my bonny light horseman in the wars he was slain. If I was some small bird and had wings and could fly, I would fly over the salt seas where my true love does lie. 3 years and 6 months now since he left this bright shore. Oh, my bonny light horseman, will I ne'er see him more. Oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, you're the cause of my woe, since my bonny light horseman to the wars he did go. Broken-hearted I'll wander, broken-hearted I remain, since my bonny light horseman in the wars he was slain. The dove she laments more, her mate as she flies. Oh, where, tell me, where is my true love, she sighs. And where in this wide world is there one to compare with my bonny light horseman who was killed in the war? Oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, you're the cause of my woe, since my bonny light horseman to the wars he did go. Broken-hearted I'll wander, broken-hearted I remain, since my bonny light horseman in the wars he was slain.
Okay, and the one thing I'll say about that song is all the British cavalry they showed in that song were heavy cavalry, but there we go. They should have shown some white dragoons and hussars, but there we go. All right, guys, good stream. Thanks for coming on. See you next week, folks. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.